Ladies and gentlemen, something really weird is going on, and specifically it's in relation to the miners' debacle in the Northwest. So for those of you who didn't watch my video yesterday, I basically talked about the miners trapped in the mine in the Northwest. Now, let's just be clear, they're not miners, they're Zamas. They're there illegally mining a disused mining shaft, heavily armed, and basically they're refusing to come out of the mine. Much of the news has been, should we say, a little bit provocative in the way that it's been phrased, and that they have described the individuals as being trapped down a mine shaft, as if it was like a legal operation that they were down there and they couldn't get food, and now nobody wanted to give them food. Well, that's not what's happening. What's actually happened is that they were down there because they've been surrounded by the police and the army, and they don't want to come out because they know if they do, they're going to get arrested and imprisoned or deported, whichever they think is worse. But now, ultimately, the question is, what do you do? I mean, if you're a police officer, do you go down into the mine shaft and arrest them? I mean, the mine shafts are actually unstable, and many of these individuals are heavily armed, carrying firearms and explosives. They're using explosives to try to get to the gold that the previous miners were unable to get to. So do you risk your own life by going down there? How many are down there? Well, you don't know. But so far, over 1,000 individuals have come out to the mine shafts. So many of the police officers rightly say, well, they don't want to risk their lives. Why would they? These are armed militia, if you'd like to describe them as any other way. Now, if these individuals want food and clothing, well, there's an easy way to get it. Leave the mine shaft and go get it. But you're going to get arrested because you are committing a crime. And many of these individuals are not here legally, as I discussed yesterday. Now, sometimes it's difficult because you have to be a little bit careful of YouTube's rules. You have to be careful how you describe stuff. I did say in yesterday's video, why are we supporting these individuals and making them out to be almost heroes? Like real miners that were trapped down in a shaft, and now we need to rescue them because that's the way they're being portrayed. These are not individuals who are doing a legal job that they have been chartered to do by a mining company that pays its dues to the South African government. They're foreign individuals stealing national resources. Effectively, that mine shaft is a crime scene. Now think of this in a logical perspective. If you go out and you give these individual generators and food and other toiletries in order to, make their life a little bit more palatable, are you not effectively discouraging them from exiting the mine shaft? And that is why the government themselves has, over recent days, said, let's just smoke them out. I mean, that's usually what you do to bad guys, right? You just smoke them out. You make their conditions unbearable. And then they leave. But you see, in typical fashion, we don't seem to ever want to protect the local population, and to even a degree, even our police force, because the Society for the Protection of Our Constitution has approached the Gauteng court in Pretoria and asked for an emergency application in the form of food, water, and blankets, which they want to be given to these miners in the shafts in order to, protect their human rights, I suppose. And this reminds me of something really weird. It's kind of like saying we have a hostage situation, and what we actually really want to do is make the captives really comfortable, because it's hard work holding hostages, and we wouldn't want them to feel like, it's unbearable for them. Why are we protecting criminals? Well, apparently we are, and the High Court has actually granted the relief. Now, the Mineral Resources Minister has said the logical thing, and that is, why are you helping illegal miners evade arrest? This seems really weird, and it is really weird, because I, for one, would agree with the Mineral Resources Minister. There seems to be this lack of understanding that if an individual engages in a dangerous operation, that they may ultimately put their own lives at risk. Just because you have decided to commit a criminal activity that could potentially harm others doesn't mean that I must suffer the consequence of that. These individuals do need to take into account the consequences of their own actions, because ultimately nobody forced them down there. These individuals are there attempting to exploit the local resources, because, it was a disused mine shaft, and why not? Maybe you'd find some gold. And I have no doubt that they did, otherwise they wouldn't still be there in large quantities. But at the end of the day, we come back to the same issue. Why are we supporting criminals? This is not a good thing to do. These individuals are not martyrs. They are not down there because, they were doing an honest day's work. And, the mine shafts were just unstable because of an unscrupulous mining company. These individuals are at a crime scene. They're committing a crime. We shouldn't be talking about their human rights. We shouldn't be talking about how they're uncomfortable. We should be making it uncomfortable for them to leave. We don't say to the murderer, Oh, I'm sure it was terribly hard stabbing that person multiple times. Let me bandage up your hand in case you got repetitive strain injury on your wrist. That would be stupid. That's effectively what we're doing in this instance. It doesn't make sense. And yet again, you can let me know what you think in the comment section below. I cannot understand why the courts are enabling criminals. Again, and then when people say that the courts appear captured and a little bit corrupt, they wonder why. This just seems a really pointless thing to do. And when we make comments about NGOs thwarting the will of the government, people crucify us and tell us that we're somehow agents of chaos. But it's true. We've got NGOs protecting all the wrong people constantly, and it's shameful. Anyway, let's move on to some other news. The first news is that apparently there's been a major shift in immigration, and that's the numbers come down. And I know there's going to be loads of people in the comment section that say, no, that's not the case. Well, according to the real estate data, that's the amount of people actually investing in property and obviously selling property. Apparently the high period where people were selling property to leave the country was 2019, with a percentage rate of around 14.9% of individuals selling at that time, all being for the purpose of immigration. Well, that percentage is now down to 7%. And according to the latest statistics by many agents and by the banks themselves, according to new applications for bonds, the number of individuals now living or wanting to live in South Africa have actually increased. This means that less people are selling to leave the country and actually more people are returning to the country. And the provinces specifically that they're choosing are the Western Cape and Gauteng. Nobody's apparently moving to the Eastern Cape. Nobody's moving to KwaZulu-Natal. Probably for obvious reasons. Gauteng suffered a huge property market crash because of, reasons. And as a result, many properties in Gauteng are currently undervalued. So many individuals coming back from abroad, going to the economic heartlands of the country, Gauteng, well, they can usually find themselves a pretty good bargain on a property compared to what it was in yesteryear. But semi-immigration apparently is still on the rise in South Africa. And that is many individuals leaving other provinces to go to, the Western Cape. Everyone's going to the Western Cape. And the biggest problem with that is that house prices in the Western Cape are now approaching levels that you basically see in England. Like, it's getting pretty expensive there. In any case, the reality of the situation is many individuals are apparently moving back to South Africa, noticing that many of the first world countries, England, Canada, wherever else, are actually turning into dystopian hellholes underneath their liberal masters. The liberal masters, they will usually shut up any form of opposition, and if you say something against them, they put you in jail. That's genuinely happening at the moment. In fact, just on a conspiracy theory, for those of you who watched my video around the Britain mostly peaceful protests, there is a conspiracy that's being pushed forward in Britain that apparently the individual who sparked the outrage at the moment may have actually been a child of an Ethiopian father. And that Ethiopian father came to Britain as an asylum seeker, even though he was wanted for war crimes in Ethiopia following the civil war. And the the defense attorney who helped him stay in the United Kingdom was, you can guess yourself. Anyway, apparently the now de facto Tsar of the United Kingdom was apparently the attorney at the time who helped him stay there. And this may account for why, when anybody questioned the official narrative of how this whole protest occurred, anybody who dared to question it was locked up, and judges were told to impose very harsh rules against these individuals. This is all allegedly, and it may just be a conspiracy theory. In fact, the conspiracy theory is owed to Nigel Farage, who apparently talked about it in hushed tones, because you see, ladies and gentlemen, actually even discussing this in Britain now could get you 10 years in jail. True story. Anyway, on to a final news story. For those of you who are staying in South Africa, there's good news and bad news. And that is, the good news is NHR don't look like it's actually going to happen for a very long time. And the reason for this is because according to some questions submitted to Parliament by Razim Zamzi, who knew they were even a party? I know they got some votes, but are they a real entity? Apparently they are. Who knew? Anyway, they asked a question of Aaron, how many hospitals in the country were actually NHR ready? Well, it's less than 40%. Apparently over 60% of hospitals are underperforming in every single metric going. And apparently the amount of money to actually get this to these hospitals to a NHR ready state would be, who knows? Well, he doesn't even know, because apparently he's going to spend like 16 million rand just finding out how bad it really is. And then we'll take it from there. But the Public Investment Corporation is apparently willing to spend 2.7 trillion of their rands, which I'm sure came from legitimate means. I'm sure they're prepared to spend all this money to bring all the state's hospitals up to scratch. Only once that's done, that's like one of the initial phases, because only once they're ready can we actually roll on to the rest of the NHR. The next thing will be obviously the funding issue, because nobody knows how it's going to get paid for at the moment. I mean, there's lots of speculation on how it might get funded, but no one knows. National Treasury also doesn't know and says that what we'd actually have to do is create a regulation around funding, which would then be open for public consultation and challenged by the courts and whatever else. And that's all going to take, about 4,000 years, knowing that the rate of the government moves. But in any case, apparently, nothing's actually going to happen for a very long time. They've committed some money to start digitalizing records, and the government's rate of delivering anything is never going to get beyond that. Because even according to the government itself, the only funds that they're actually allocating to NHI are funds they would have allocated had the NHI Act not been signed anyway. So nobody's actually taking it seriously, which is exactly what we predicted. In any case, what a nonsense piece of legislation. This should never have been passed. Anyway, that's just my views. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.